Hello there, and thank you very much for joining us today in this new Azure Portal How-To video. Today we'll learn how to use Azure Resource Graph, Azure Service Health, and Logs in Azure Workbooks. And for that, we have Shika Jain, who's going to show us how to do that. So thank you very much for joining us today, Shika.
Thank you, Leon, for having me again here. It has been fun doing the first video, and now I'm here to talk about the second step as to how do you use workbooks to bring data from logs. Workbooks, as you know, is a visualization tool that's available in Azure Monitor, and you can build your troubleshooting guides or the narratives that you have around different data, like how are my resources doing, how's the health, how's the performance. So often we are getting questions on how do I get started? And this is where I'm going to show you today how to build a complex narrative. So folks, let's get started. This time I'm going to show you how to build a workbook which has data coming in from Azure Resource Graph, to use selectors and some other capabilities like where my resources are, how they're doing. So we're going to show the health. And then we're also going to go to logs just to see, what is the log usage and how the alerts are getting triggered. So we're going to use the same components, but build a story around it. And as they say, let's start from the very beginning. I'm going to start with an empty workbook. And here, what I'm going to do is, this is a blank canvas for me. Last time when we talked about, we started with add metrics. So now we're going to start with adding the parameters. Now, as in any programming language, parameters helps you identify or scope down things that you want to represent in this particular case. Since we talked about Azure Resource Graph and everything in Azure Portal starts with a subscription, I'm going to start there. So I'm going to add a parameter for subscription. So it starts with clicking the add parameter and giving it the name. And so you see there is a display name and there is a parameter name. So this is the name that we will use as an author behind this scene, and display name is what the user using the workbook will see. So this is the description and the name, and then we have a set of parameter types that are already built in. So subscription picker, since it's an Azure Portal construct, is already available to you, and you can choose either default subscriptions or all subscriptions. These are tied to the directory settings that you have here. And this is a field that would be required, like I have to make a choice of a subscription, so I'll mark it as required. Right now, we're going to do one subscription at a time, but there is an option to do multiple subscriptions as well. So having said that, this kind of is now ready to use, and I can go and set it to one of my subscriptions. So you see how I got the list of all my subscriptions, and I now selected one. So now the question comes up quite often, where are my resources in all these subscriptions? I can very well go and run queries and find out the information, but I'll tell you a very quick and neat way of doing this. This is where query comes into view. So query basically means anything in workbook that can query different data sources. And by data sources, once I click the add query, you would see we have a list of data sources here. So Azure Resource Graph is one of the data sources. Logs is one of the key which opens as a default. You can even query Azure Resource Manager, Kusto instance like Data Explorer if you have any, Azure Health, which I'm going to demo. And then there are these custom ones which are more programmatically, and we will do it in more advanced courses later on. So let's start with Azure Resource Graph. And what I wanted to point out why we selected parameter is now I don't have to keep selecting my subscriptions again and again and going through that process. I'm going to use this parameter that I defined right on the top here and say, okay, get me all the, so what I'm doing is I'm getting a list of locations and where the resources are. So I'm just writing a simple query here. And for this particular subscription, when I run it, it'll get me this list. So you see, I have like my primary users in East US, I can see that. But this is good information. Picture-wise, let's paint it a little bit better. Because I'm a visual person, I like to see it on a map. There you go. So with one click here of the visualization, which are different controls that we discussed last time as well, and you can find more information about it in the documentation sections, I just switched it to map. Now this tells me very visually, I can see, okay, where all the spread is, where the concentration is. And these are some of the settings that I can change to, change the experience of how much region size I want to show. Let's just change the color here right now, a very basic thing that we will do, and make it much more presentable. So now I'm done with this, and this is my view. Right, there you go. I can make it more complex by segmenting it by resource group and adding one more parameter here, and keep driving and drilling into this. Now, let's step into the next process of it, which is I know how many resources I have, but I do not know how they are performing, like what's their health. I can always go to resource health or in each of these resources and find that out, or go to a subscription and resource group. But since I'm building a story, let's do things right here. I will again select a query because it's going to be a data source. So the data source this time is going to be Azure Health. That's what I'm trying to query. And it's looking for resource type. So what I can go and do is I can again go and add another parameter. And this is how you kind of build the story with workbooks. I don't have to define the parameter upfront. If I have the design, I can do that. But as you are thinking about it, this helps in building it. And resource type is another picker that's available out of box. Basically, it brings all the Azure known resource types, and you can use that. Again, I can make it required, non-required, and other things. So let's just go here and go with this. Oh, the other thing I wanted to also mention is sometimes some parameters you don't want to expose to users. You just want to use it like a control factor. Let's say if I want to do verification, is the data in or not? I could do this parameter as a hidden parameter. And this is what you would see here, like the parameter would be hidden, but I can use it in my as an author building the story. So right now, I don't want anybody to select resource type. I'm just going to use it as a parameter. So you see, when I'm done editing, it's not visible. But when I'm in the edit mode, when I'm the author, I can use that. So now coming back to our health query. So instead of specifying it here, now you would see there is a parameter that pops up. I'm just going to use that. And for the resources, again, I'm going to use my subscription, because what I'm saying is give me the health of all the resources in the subscription, because I didn't set the resource type yet. And I can either do a summary or a detail view of it. So while this query is running, let me switch over to the mode where the data has already been populated. So when I ran the query in summary mode, it'll give me this information. Like 134 resources are available, 112 are unavailable, 68 is unknown, and 9 are degraded. Now notice this is not matching the count here, because this is specific resource types that I had set up. And the detailed view looks like this grid. So in terms of presentation, now one piece of the workbook is fetching the data, which is what we did with running the query. Now let's make it presentable. Just like what we did with map, we could either go and customize these columns, or we can go and change the visualization. For this, I feel like pie chart would make more sense, because then I can see the distribution and the percentage and all that good stuff. And another thing you would notice is that there is a different color coding for different states. So I can go and change these color coding. I have full customization to do. Like I have set available to green, unavailable to red. But if you think unknown should not be gray, maybe it should be blue, I can go and change that. And this basically gives me a lot of flexibility on how I want to represent things. So having said that, this becomes your view on the summary of how my resources are doing. So I'm kind of curious about those 112. Which ones are those? So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to deep dive into the detailed ones. So in the detail, if you notice, I have got the data again in a grid. And I think the consumption experience in grid is much better here. One thing that I have gone ahead and done, again, if you notice, availability state has a representation which quickly tells me which one is available, which one is unavailable. Because of each of the columns, I can go and change what rendering needs to be done. And I have used thresholds here. And thresholds allows me either to put an icon here or a color. So I've chosen icon and given the values and said, okay, show me these icons when the states are these. The other good thing is now I get the whole list of resources, but I don't know where these resources are because I usually organize my subscription through resource group. I do have that data. So let's go ahead and do one thing, which is a capability that we have in Workbook called group by. So you can group these elements in a grid by a particular column name. So I'm going to group these by a resource group. And this is just the setting so that every time I open it, it'll have them expanded. So when I do that application, you see now it's grouping it. But the experience of reading this GUID, like this is the resource ID, so I want to make it much more, much more presentable so that I can read exactly how I read it in the Azure Portal browser blades and other places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and edit this column because this is the group by column that's been added and the rendering is automatic, but I can go and change this to resource type. I can pick any one of these, but the one that applies here is resource type. And if you notice now, it will actually, resource type will show this, but it actually is resource. So it will give the resource name with the icon. So now I can read this information much more clearly and then kind of go into these. So here, if I click on it, it'll take me to the resource overview blade directly. I can link this resource group as well and go to that resource group too. So if I want to drill down into further as to what's happening. And each of these icons here kind of tells me what kind of resource it is. So that's about resource health. So now once we've done this, your view looks like, you have the resource locations, you have their health data, and I can add labels to it. And then I have the detailed view of the health of these resources, when it happened, what's the reason, and all that good information is available to me.
Thank you very much, Shika. That was great. And thanks every one of you for watching. Please try this out and let us know what you think. Please share your workbooks with us. We'd love to see them. Leave us a comment in the comment section. Follow us on Twitter and look forward to seeing you in the next video where we will have more workbooks stuff to share. So thank you very much and see you soon.
Thank you, Leon.